Deputy Brid Smith, please. My apologies.
I'm sharing with Deputy Barry, and I'm making a statement within which there will be a few questions which I'm happy to take the answers in writing. Minister, we've been raising the question of the treatment of residents in direct provision for a month now, and I just want to repeat that I believe this government have failed miserably to protect the rights of our most vulnerable during this COVID crisis, and I think any examination post-COVID will show this to be true. We have gone from 62 cases in 9 clusters to 149 in 10 clusters. Those figures may have gone up, and I note in your speech you did not update us on the figures in direct provision. The inactions in the case of direct provision are abuses of human rights, of people who are seeking protection from war, from famine, from persecution. We've gone over this. Direct provision has been here for 20 years. And it has been used as a way almost of deterring people from coming here because of the isolation, the humiliation and the abuse that they suffer. You say in your speech that Dr. Catherine Day will produce a report later this year, and that will be welcome, but I'm afraid it will not deal with the urgency of how we deal with COVID in the meantime. We've had multiple reports, multiple warnings, multiple studies that have documented the inadequacy of the direct provision system, and although you say 20% are now in own-door accommodation, that still leaves about 6,000 residents living in the DP system. And what was abusive and inhumane in ordinary times may show to be dangerous and possibly even lethal in this pandemic times. I'm struck while reading all the replies to various deputies on questions about direct provision on a number of things. Firstly, you have a constant refrain that this is a health issue, the responsibility of the HSE or the social inclusion unit or of the management of the centres. Somebody else but not you. Somebody else but not justice. And it's a bit like how we deal with the nursing homes. We contracted out the provision of the care of our most vulnerable to private for-profit companies, and then when it goes wrong we say it's not our responsibility, nothing to do with us. It is just not good enough. Somebody in your department decided to send applicants from overcrowded conditions to remote hotels, some of them still overcrowded, where they couldn't socially isolate, where they share bathrooms and shower facilities, communal kitchens and shared meals. And somebody thought it was okay to pack a bus with 120 residents and send them down to Kerry from centres in Dublin, when the centre in Dublin had COVID-positive 19 cases. Testing began on the 14th of April for residents in Cahirciveen. 4 tested positive, but it wasn't until the 28th of April that a dedicated medically qualified person was appointed to the Skellig Centre. And all this time, you and your department were content to issue statements that everything was being done to ensure the health and safety at all stages. But there's a huge disconnect between that reassurance and the reality on the ground. If you're happy to contract out the responsibility to a private for-profit company called Remcol, a company with no medical experience, no expertise in public health, and a company indeed which up to this week had one cleaner cleaning 15 rooms, one cleaner with no public health experience in which COVID-19 people are infected. But Remcol is not unique because this system of direct provision is costing the state over 70 million a year, a significant part of which goes to boost the profits of private companies. And we're constantly getting information about the lack of proper conditions and the poor treatment and nutrition that's available therein. And I don't think guidance on an email or on a website is enough. There has to be enforcement of how the conditions are in these centres. Where is the enforcement in Cahirciveen and indeed in other centres? You are not absolved of the responsibility for the conditions in these centres unless you enforce that the conditions are properly adhered to. My first question to you very quickly is to ask you, can you tell us where the letter emanated that was given to the residents in Cahirciveen this week? My second question is, will you be forcing another lockdown on those residents if it proves that they're being told they're not doing enough to socially isolate? And my third question is, will you allow them to move out into centres where they'll feel safe? At the end of the day, the only way to deal with this inhumane system is to now grant all of the direct provision residents asylum, grant it to them immediately. And I'll just say this to finish. I will later post a series of photographs from Twitter. You heard of 3 billboards outside Epping. Well, wait till you see the 7 billboards outside Cahirciveen that will condemn you and your department, and I hope you'll feel ashamed for it. The social solidarity of the people of Cahirciveen is next to none.
Acknowledge the serious challenge that is direct provision, particularly in the context of the current public health situation. But I want to assure all of the deputies that improvements are being carried out on a daily basis in order to ensure the comforts of all of those involved. There are actually 69 residents now in Cahirciveen. There's capacity for 150. Anybody who was tested positive was given the opportunity of moving to one of the specially designated centres, of which there are 4, particulars of which I mentioned earlier. I just say to Deputy Smith, again repeated by Deputy Barry, we're being accused in the first instance of contracting out or in some way blaming health for guidance. On the other hand, we're told that we don't have health expertise. I make no apologies in this House or anywhere to say that we followed the advice of Public Health and HSE, and that's what we're doing, because we acknowledge that they're the ones that provide the expertise, but we will continue to provide improved facilities in Cahirciveen and in all of the centres. And I would be happy to include Deputy Barry in the ongoing process of information to which both Deputy Healy's Ray are appraised of.
Thank you very much. Now